Hi, everybody. My name is Robert. On Twitter, I am Lay. You guys can all harass me. Feel free to harass me during this talk. The best harassment will win a prize. I'm going to be talking a little bit about privacy today. It was supposed to be more of a history lesson, but today I changed it after the release of some papers in the last month. And I'm going to be talking a lot about spacey state surveillance technology and how you can detect and defend against that idea. Ooh, this is a long reach. Again, this is who I am. My name is Robert. Speaker, kind of an advocate type of thing. I do research as my primary job. I'm part of a Irvine Underground group, which is kind of local, and I enjoy the OWASP groups. So you guys might have seen me around. Quick breakdown. I only have 20, 30 minutes, so I'm just going to quickly run through the series of bugs, basically the technology that they're using, hardware, software, Wi-Fi stuff, cell phone tracking. I'm going to go through the defenses in line and then end it all off with basic conclusions as to what I feel and what I hope everybody takes away from this. So most of this has started off because of the surveillance sky mall leaks is like that's what I like to call it. These were the leaks that Jacob Appelbaum released via Der Spiegel during the CCC conference last month. It was a series, basically it looked like the Sky Mall catalog, like with NSA agents and GCHQ would basically turn around and like order each individual little bug that they wanted to order to do spying. And it got a lot of press. I watched the talk, found it interesting, but I felt as if it lacked some component, an actual usable component for anybody to walk away from. It was a lot of hearsay, a lot of jibber jabber saying this is bad stuff's happening, but nothing that was actually tangible. And this is what I really wanted to see. So that's why I wanted to put together this talk, which kind of associates itself with that one, because this is the stuff that I wanted to see somebody actually release. Because if there's a bug, there's a physical presence of the bug. So starting off, these are the series of bugs that were called basically retroreflectors. Think of them kind of like a little radar device or basically like an RFID tag, sort of. These are little things that were built inline to either, they're called Surly Spawn Loud Audio Rage Master, but they're built into like your VGA cables. Maybe they're just a bug that was installed in the room that runs off of a battery, and they would just listen on a microphone and re-amplify it over an RF signal to a basically a little base station that they had that will pull the data off. These are physical bugs, though, I felt. And I felt like his talk should have been talking about, here I actually found one, and here's some hard evidence as to how it works. So it's pretty easy to defend against a physical bug, especially something that sends an RF frequency. So you can just literally put tinfoil all around your office. And so this would be the first solution that I would provide. And I'm not seeing it, but really all you guys should be face palming. There you go. Really bad slide alteration. None of the things that I actually should talk about, and you guys should be like throwing basically like shmoo balls at me, saying I'm a jackass for coming up here, saying everybody should be wearing tinfoil hats. None of the solutions that I provide are things like this. The problem with an idea like this, like tinfoil, or I should say the tinfoil, or the solutions were like a Faraday cage to prevent anybody from listening into what's going on, is that you're assuming and you're actually accepting the idea that the spying is taking place. And yes, theoretically, if that had happened, yes, you would have been preventing it, but you'd have no idea to verify if that was happening. So you're basically sticking yourself, you're causing the problem yourself. The attack may or may not exist, but the fact that you would go out and do a defense that doesn't actually detect anything, and then especially if you turn around and proclaim it as fact and say, oh, I have a Faraday caged laptop, none of the spying agencies will ever get the data off of it. Bad BIOS will never happen to this laptop. But the problem is you don't actually have evidence of it. And there's ways to detect that actual evidence. For RF bug detection, the way to do it would be to actually get the software-defined radio, a device like this, the HackRF board by Michael Ossman. Go get one of those. They're about $300. The Kickstarter just finished, and they're actually being produced. This is basically high-end, but for the high-end, best device you can get, a software-defined radio device to listen to anything from 10 megahertz up to 6 gigahertz. You'll be able to listen to that data, and then you'll actually be able to see, oh, I physically have the RF frequencies pinging right now. And you would verify it by physically unplugging the device, because like your VGA cable, if it was a bug that was in line to the VGA cable, things like that, you physically unplug it and see if that RF pinging stopped. Now you have evidence. Now you actually have tangible evidence that you can go forward and go public and say, this is the tangible evidence that I have, as opposed to majority of the problem during the whole Dragos bad BIOS thing. A lot of people were freaking out. It's very good to catch headlines, but the problem is there was no there's no documents that said, here are the actual frequencies. Here's some data that I actually pulled off of it. And that's what I felt it kind of lacked. It kind of fell forward and basically fell on itself, and it was a bad representation of things. And this same thing with these theoretical bugs is that unless somebody comes forth and says, here's actual evidence, here's actual RF frequency that I picked up, I personally don't believe it. And I think it's something that's basically disheartening towards the whole community. It looks bad for everybody. But going on, different types of hardware bugs. They're known as cottonmouth Ginsu. That's not actually a picture of Ginsu. That's a Wi-Fi card with a Ginsu knife. Firewalk howler monkey. These are all different ways. These ones exfiltrated data, not using RF frequencies, but using basically for cottonmouth, it was USB. It would be a bug that jammed itself into the USB firewalk. It's a little bug that affixed itself to your Ethernet card. Ginsu was Wi-Fi card. Howler monkey was just kind of like the chips that they use, basically a chipset that they would use. All of these share a common theme. These are all physical devices that change your physical device. So it would be for Firewalk or Cottonmouth, it would be your USB or your Ethernet card, and now there's a physical device that's added onto it. I think this is even better because most of us should know what these things should look like, especially a USB cable or your Ethernet card, and you can see when there's been physical tampering. And I believe that somebody should have turned around and said, there's what it is, or here's that bug that I found. It was attached to my motherboard. Going on, there's another series of, I stopped doing pictures because I got tired of it. There's another series of persistent compromised devices. These are things that they would infect your for GodSurge. This was a device that was plugged into the JTAG port on a Dell PowerEdge servers. It got very popular. You can plug into JTAG ports. Who here knows what JTAG is for? It's basically a debugger, like two of you guys, and the guy with Google Glass is the other one. It's the port on your BIOS or on your motherboard that you can use for debugging directly to the CPU. It's used a lot in hacks and things like that. You can pull data off your routers really nice and easily. It's your debugging purpose port, so you can get all the data off the router really easily. But it turns out they just use it for persistent compromise port because, well, you get direct access to the CPU. You can just dump all the data on there directly. Don't even have to worry about your OS. And the rest of these series, JetPlow, the water, the head Halux water, or the school Sierra Stucco, these are all devices that would be persistent compromise for routers, things like that. They'd be, again, a physical device is plugged into your router or into your BIOS or on the motherboard. And people should be turning around right now and kind of looking at them and saying, hey, this is what I found. So for those of you who aren't familiar with JTAG, on the left, that's what a JTAG port looks like when it doesn't have any pins. They can have pins, about 14 pins. That's before it's basically put pins in. On the bottom is another example. It doesn't have to be JTAG. It's another header called XDP. It's similar to JTAG. It's used for just basically a different series of motherboards. And there's a big long list of potential things. What you see on the right is something, probably a really bad example. This is an actual compromise, but this is just somebody who plugged in a board to their JTAG headers, and that's what it would look like. It would be somebody plugged in a device. So everybody here knows what a motherboard should look like, and you should be able to detect when something doesn't exist because every wire on motherboard is typically going to be on the PCB traces. It's all going to be PCB traces. They're going to be exposed wires that can reconnect things. We're not playing with Apple IIs here. And it's pretty easy to, I think everybody should be able to open up the case and actually look if you think you're being surveilled by state actors. You can all see probably something here doesn't belong. That's about what you're looking for. You're looking for everything looks normal, everything's PCB trace. Now there's suddenly some wires in a little dongle device that you don't know, or a bottle of bleach in the refrigerator. There are also software exploits. Obviously, software exploits aren't going to work the same as hardware exploits when you detect them. But so in this case, Swap and iRateMonk are devices, or basically, I think they're firmware compromises for hard drives, and Wistful and Deity Bounce are software exploits for other basic motherboard BIOSes. In these, since you're not going to be able to physically detect them, it's actually a really simple solution. If you honestly do think, and you're wearing a tinfoil hat, you can just reflash your device. And I don't want to hear anybody complain about how there's a potential. But you can also pull the image off the device and then inspect the image directly. If you get an image from the manufacturer and you pull an image off the device and they are different, now you have something that's tangible and you can release it and tell everybody, hey, I actually found this thing. Even if you don't understand how to decompile it, you can say, hey, it's different, and just give it up to the community, and other people that have the time and expertise will decompile a BIOS and say, oh, this is what I think is happening, as opposed to just claiming that it happened and not providing any evidence. Now, Wi-Fi attacks are actually really simple. There were two that were released in the catalog. One was Sparrow. It's kind of neat. It connects to a UAV, so it connects to a drone. And then Nightstand. Nightstand is this big box, like a Pelican case with a laptop inside. It's kind of funny because the Hack 5 Pineapple is probably more, honestly, probably more cool than these things. It probably does more as well. And everybody who's been around at least to one conference, probably there was a talk on it here. I didn't check the schedule, but you should understand how to do Wi-Fi basic compromises, and that's how these devices will work. If you know how to do the Wi-Fi compromises, you know how to look for things going weird with your Wi-Fi devices that you're connecting to. Basically, all the same arguments will still exist. Getting into the fun one, the cell phone bugs. There were kind of two series of types of bugs that they were using. A lot of them were like an actual cell phone device, and a lot of it was used for tracking people. So if you were given a cell phone, or basically your cell phone was taken by somebody, they could track where you are using the base stations if you had this infected cell phone. But turns out how cell phones work is they connect to towers anyways, and everybody with a cell phone should already be aware that since they know what towers that you connect to, they know where you are. Especially with GPS on cell phones, this should not be a surprise to anything. And this is like, it's quite surprising to see this on a list of things that we can track people's cell phones, and we're so great because we have this great technology. When in fact, that's basically ingrained into every cell phone right now. But there's other stuff. There were a lot of malicious, basically GSM rogue base stations, and this is a big concern because now instead of you connecting to the legitimate tower via your service provider, you'll be connecting to the malicious towers that they've installed. This was released in DEF CON a number of years ago, GSM stuff, basically GSM base station hacking. It was at, not this year, but previous year's DEF CON, they actually had their own rogue cell network. At other events, they always have rogue cell networks. They're actually a thing now. They don't cost too much money to put together. And all this is basically, with 6 or 7 different names, they're all the exact same thing. It's a GSM base station that you can plug in, and people's cell phones will connect to it because cell phones will happily connect to whatever closest service provider they can find for their radio frequency. For this attack, I actually came up with a basic idea, and I'm putting together the code for it. It's called Tower Canary. It would just be an Android app that looks for your local cell phone towers and tells you whenever there's a change. Obviously, you can't turn up a rogue base station without showing up on a list of towers that are available. So when a new tower shows up at your home or your office, this program will just simply go, bloop, there's a new tower. I don't know where it came from, but it wasn't here yesterday. So either your service provider is turning up new towers, which you can probably see, or something new is weird is happening. This probably has a very limited audience, since if you were to travel while this app is running, it will tell you every time there's a new base station because you've traveled to a new one. But let's say theoretically you're some guy, might be being held in an embassy, some South American country's embassy, and you're kind of stuck in one location. So I got at least one person that needs this. And instead of that person turning around and saying, I think that they're using rogue base stations near this embassy, they could actually run a program like this, because every cell phone has the ability to associate itself with different towers. And in the Android platform, I know already that you can easily pull the information from each tower that's available. So it's one function call. You just basically call it and it gives you a list of all the cell towers that are currently available and basic information about that tower. So doing things like that are far more beneficial, again, to the community, to say, this is what we did. Yes, I'm stuck in this area, and now suddenly at my office there was a new cell phone tower. Or even if the rogue cell tower existed and it went away, they're like, well, it was there and then it stopped being there. So I don't know what happened with that. So typically cell phone providers aren't running around turning up cell towers and then tearing them down and putting them up and putting them down. So that looks a little bit weird. So the whole conclusion on this is I really wanted to give out the information because it seemed, especially when I talk to people online about it, like on Reddit threads, like a lot of the responses in regards to the whole talk that exposed what these bugs were, was that it was now up to the community to find the bugs. And then it's not up to the individual who reported all of them to verify that those things actually existed. Mind you, but to me, I felt like, well, no, he actually should be going out and finding those people. If the person who was reporting this was a person who may or may not claim that they've been investigated and tracked by the U.S. and other various government organizations. Perhaps they have one of these bugs installed on one of their devices. Perhaps they could order a laptop and see if it came with a bunch of new shit added to it. Just let them, basically buy into it. But none of that happened. I kind of felt as if he was at a loss when that presentation was given. Hard evidence is always better than hearsay. I honestly do get kind of tired when a lot of people claim things. A lot of people that wear tinfoil hats come around and they say that somebody's spying on them because they've got a billionaire is spying on them and hired a private investigator. This is actually a story that I heard. Somebody had a private investigator that was following them, and they knew because they stopped at a stoplight and they turned right, and the guy in the other car looked at them, and they knew that was the private investigator. And that's just, frankly, I get tired of hearing those people. Thank you. But tinfoil hats are not stylish. Nobody should be wearing them. This one is very cool. This one was a friend's creation. I guess if you are going to be crazy, you at least might as well put some effort into it. Now that you've told me it's going to work that way, it channels them. Also, mind you, too, the leaks, I didn't mention this earlier, the leak source for the SkyMall, all the documents for the NSA SkyMall or the GCHQ SkyMall thing, the leak source was not Snowden. A lot of people like to associate the two things because they feel that the Snowden leaks were really strong. The leak source was a site called leaksource.files.wordpress.com. I don't know, they should add Tumblr and Blogspot. But that's where you can actually download and get information about this leaks. I don't know who that leak source is. So honestly, I feel as if all of the information that was released in those leaks might actually all be misinformation or just bullshit that some guy made up because that's the best he could think of. In any case, I discredit because I don't see any evidence of it, what's happening, but I do enjoy that leak because I feel as if it was a good thought. It's a good thought experiment for a lot of people. You can think that, oh, well, yeah, of course they could do that. There were the BIOS hacks in the hardware, or basically hard drive firmware that was released at CCC last year, but it's basically re-released. It's a good way. It's a good thought experiment for a lot of people. Maybe you want to think about what you're doing, and if you genuinely do think that you're being monitored and stuff, go look, and now you can verify if you're being monitored or not, and you can sleep better at night. Again, there's some sources here. Michael Osman, that was the place to get the HackRF board. Bruce Schneier talks a lot about this stuff, and there's you can harass me on Twitter. Tell me I'm crazy, and I think I got a couple tweets here, and I got a couple more minutes. I got 2 new interactions I'm going to see. Oh, I tested a Tower Canary and phone phone. All right. Just D. Schwartzberg. All right, we can talk. And I need a high gain amplifier for the hat.